Tamriel's grand temples, sanctioned gods, and public rituals hold only part of the story. Beneath the surface lies a darker thread, whispers of cults and sects that slid through shadows and offered forbidden visions of power. These groups were more than secret clubs. Some sought to rewrite reality, others to tear open the gates to oblivion, and a few even summoned powers that the Empire feared most. They had followers who believed in their cause, doctrines that challenged the divine order, and rituals so unsettling they were hunted by sword and decree. Most of them vanished in flames, betrayal, or disgrace. Leaders hidden in crypts or lost texts, temples razed, scrolls burned, members executed or exiled. Still, not every trace disappeared. A whispered chant in a ruined cave, a half-buried statue in a forgotten temple. Some of these sects didn't die in a single moment. They drifted into silence, hiding beneath the soil of old ruins or inside the walls of abandoned sanctums. Some splintered and re-emerged with new names and angles of belief. This video will explore the major outlawed cults in Tamriel's history, groups who broke the rules of gods and emperors, and whose ideas were strong enough to shape the world. We'll see what drove the Marukati to redraw timelines, and why the Mythic Dawn wanted to bring Mehrunes Dagon back into our world. We'll dive into the worm cult's obsession with death and the resistance of Dunmer dissidents to the tribunal. We'll touch on small, whispered groups tied to dragons or moon spirits that escaped official histories. These aren't just old myths or bad legends. They had plans, strength, and followers willing to die for them. They burned their truths into history, sometimes literally, and some survived behind the scenes. We'll look at why each group emerged, what they believed made them blind to danger or ready to break every law. We'll ask how they tried to reach their goals, opening oblivion gates, speaking with Daedra, ripping time apart, or rejecting state religion. We'll track their sudden ends, crushed by heroes, silenced by empires, or torn apart from within. Then we'll ask why they ended. Was it failure, betrayal, holy fire, or the fear of their own power? And we'll leave room to wonder, did they end at all? Tamriel is full of hidden places and forgotten tomes. Somewhere beneath the earth or in the dusty archives, another sect waits, surviving by silence and secrecy. By diving into their stories, we peel back the layers of a world that seems ruled by law and faith, but that has always held more secrets than anyone cares to admit. This journey isn't about gods we already know. It's about dangerous ideas with believers brave enough to chase just them. A disclaimer, since there isn't much known about these cults, I don't have that much footage to put here, so I'll just have some Oblivion remastered gameplay. It is not ideal, but it will have to do. And first up is the Marukati Selective. The Marukati Selective were not just a fringe cult. They were a breakaway force from inside one of the most powerful religious movements in early Tamrielic history. They came from the Alessian Order, a theocratic empire that tried to bring divine order to the world through faith and strict doctrine. But the Marukati believed that wasn't enough. To them, the problem went deeper. They weren't just against elven rule. They believed elven influence had tainted the very fabric of creation. Their founder, the prophet Maruk, claimed he received visions from the ghost of Saint Alessia herself, showing him that the world was still under the shadow of elven gods. In his writings, Maruk argued that the 8 divines were not pure enough because Akatosh still carried traits of Auriel, the elven god of time. He called for a cleansing of the pantheon to make it truly human. After his death, his followers didn't just keep the faith, they escalated it. The Selectives were the most extreme of these followers, obsessed with purifying time itself. They believed the very timeline of reality needed to be altered to strip out the elven version of events. This led to the Middle Dawn. What they did wasn't just ritual or prayer, it was something on the edge of metaphysics and myth. Through a complex combination of chanting, synchronized ritual, and symbolic acts like the so-called Dance on the Tower, the Marukati tried to break the connection between Akatosh and Auriel. Their goal was to create a timeline where Akatosh was only a human god free from elven roots. And something happened. It wasn't just a symbolic shift. time itself fractured. This event is known as a dragon break, a phenomenon where cause and effect stop working the way they should and multiple timelines exist at once. During the Middle Dawn, more than 1,000 years passed in some places, while in others, nothing happened at all. Entire centuries became uncertain. Histories disagreed with each other. Different cultures remembered different versions of events. It's one of the most confusing periods in Elder Scrolls lore. This chaos is what made the Marukati so dangerous. They weren't just a cult trying to summon a Daedra or preach a new truth. They were changing how time flowed. Their actions shook empires and faiths to the core. The instability they caused forced powerful groups to respond. The Alessian Order itself, once their ally, turned against them. So did secular rulers who feared the collapse of order. The War of Righteousness followed, an internal conflict that shattered the Alessian Empire and marked the end of the Selective's influence. Temples were burned, heretics were executed, and surviving texts were destroyed or buried. After the war, the Marukati Selective were wiped out as an organized force, but their ideas never fully disappeared. Some scholars whisper that they succeeded, at least in part. After all, Akatosh is now viewed as a human god, not Oriel. The timeline changed. Maybe not how they planned, but something shifted. Their legacy remains in small fragments, cryptic texts, broken relics, and stories that don't quite add up. Some believe isolated sects still survive, hiding in remote places, studying ways to bend time again. Others think their methods were absorbed by later groups like the Sijic Order or even certain Telvanni mages. What makes the Marukati Selective so strange is that they weren't purely mad or evil. They thought they were fixing the world, restoring balance. But they were playing with forces no mortal should touch. And when they lost control, the world nearly broke. They stand as one of the most mysterious cults in Tamriel's history, not just because of what they believed, but because of what they actually did. No one really knows what the timeline looked like before the Middle Dawn. No one can say with full certainty what the world would have been if the Selective had never acted. That uncertainty is their true legacy. They left behind a scar on time itself, and maybe somewhere in the cracks of history they're still watching or waiting. Next up is the Mythic Dawn. The Mythic Dawn was one of the most infamous cults in Tamriel, led by Munkar Camoran, a sorcerer and charismatic figure who believed that the mortal world, Nirn, was a prison meant to trap souls. He worshipped Mehrunes Dagon, the Daedric prince of destruction and change, as a liberator who could free the world from its bonds. Unlike many cults that sought power or chaos for its own sake, the Mythic Dawn's members truly believed they were bringing salvation by destroying the current order. Their goal was to tear down the barriers between Nirn and oblivion, to end the cycle of existence that kept souls trapped in mortal form. Munkar Camoran's teachings spread quietly at first, infiltrating imperial society through hidden temples, spies, and loyal followers. The cult was secretive and operated through a network of agents that worked in the shadows to undermine the empire from within. They promised freedom and power to those willing to betray the empire's laws and faith in the divines. Their message appealed to many who felt oppressed or lost hope in the empire's future, especially during times of political instability. The Mythic Dawn's most daring and infamous act was the assassination of Emperor Uriel Septim VII. This event shocked Tamriel and marked the beginning of the Oblivion Crisis. By killing the Emperor, the cult sought to destabilize the Empire's leadership and pave the way for Mehrunes Dagon's invasion. The cult then opened multiple Oblivion gates across Tamriel, creating portals that allowed Daedric forces to pour into the mortal realm. These gates caused widespread destruction and chaos as Daedra attacked cities, towns, and settlements. The invasion was swift and brutal, forcing the Empire to fight for survival against an enemy from beyond the mortal world. The period known as the Oblivion Crisis became one of the darkest times in Tamriel's history. The Empire was on the verge of collapse as Daedric forces ravaged the land, and the people faced terror and loss on a massive scale. However, hope came in the form of the hero of Kuwatch, a figure chosen to rise against the Daedra. This hero fought bravely, closing the Oblivion Gates one by one, pushing back the invading forces, and inspiring others to resist. Their actions united Tamriel's people and helped restore order bit by bit. The climax of the crisis came when Martin Septim, the last true heir of the Septim bloodline, took up the Amulet of Kings, a powerful artifact tied to the balance between Mundus and Oblivion. Martin's role was critical in the final confrontation against Mehrunes Dagon. In a moment of great sacrifice, Martin used the power of the amulet to transform into an avatar of Akatosh, the dragon god of time. With this divine power, he banished Mehrunes Dagon and sealed the Oblivion Gates, ending the invasion and saving Tamriel from destruction. Martin's sacrifice was a defining moment that restored hope and stability to the Empire, but it also marked the end of the Septim line and a major shift in imperial politics. The Mythic Dawn as an organization was shattered. With Mankar Camoran defeated and many followers killed or captured, the cult was hunted down relentlessly. Remaining members went into hiding or were destroyed. The Empire worked hard to root out any remaining influence of the cult, destroying their temples and secret places of worship. Even though the Mythic Dawn was no longer a direct threat, their actions left a lasting mark on Tamriel. The Oblivion Crisis changed the political landscape and the people's relationship with Daedric forces. It showed how dangerous fanatical groups could be when driven by extremist beliefs. The cult's view of Nirn as a prison was rejected by most, but the scale of their violence and ambition proved that their threat was real and devastating. The story of the Mythic Dawn reminds us that beneath the surface of everyday life in Tamriel, there are always darker forces at work, waiting for a chance to strike. It also highlights the importance of heroes and leaders willing to stand against such dangers to protect the world. Though the cult was defeated, its memory lingers as a warning of what can happen when belief turns into fanaticism and destruction. Many questions remain about how deep their influence reached and what secret knowledge they left behind, leaving room for future stories and discoveries in Tamriel's vast history. Then there is the Order of the Black Worm. The Order of the Black Worm, often known simply as the Worm Cult, is one of the most notorious and persistent necromantic sects in Tamriel. Its roots trace back to Manimarco, a powerful mortal mage who sought not just to control death, but to conquer it outright. Manimarco's obsession was with mastering undeath and capturing souls, breaking the natural order that bound life and death. Unlike typical necromancers who might seek power or fear death, the Worm Cult's goal was more than survival. They wanted ultimate dominion over souls and eternity itself. They believed that by wielding the power of undeath, they could surpass mortality and reshape existence on their terms. This belief pushed them into practices that most Tamrielans found abhorrent, such as soul trapping and raising undead armies. The cult's rituals were dark and secretive, performed in hidden temples and crypts, often beneath the surface of cities or deep in forgotten ruins. Their influence extended into the highest ranks of magical society as they infiltrated the Mages Guild, using their positions to spread their influence and gather forbidden knowledge. Through subversion and careful planning, the Worm Cult managed to establish cells across Tamriel, gaining footholds in places like Cyrodiil and Morrowind. They didn't just operate in the shadows. They actively waged war using armies of undead warriors and powerful necromantic magic, which made them a deadly threat to kingdoms and empires. One of the darkest chapters involving the Worm Cult was during the Plane Meld, a chaotic event where the barriers between Mundus and Oblivion were weakened. The cult saw this as an opportunity to further their goals and gain strength, exploiting the chaos to expand their reach. Alongside this, the Soulburst event brought a surge of soul energy that the cult attempted to harness, using the unleashed power to bolster their forces and summon even greater undead horrors. These events demonstrated the cult's resilience and their ability to rise again even after suffering setbacks. Despite their power and cunning, the Order of the Black Worm faced strong opposition from Imperial forces and the Mages Guild, who viewed them as a dangerous abomination. Imperial mages launched multiple purges to root out cult members, destroying temples and capturing or killing many of their leaders. These campaigns pushed the cult underground, forcing it to fracture into smaller, secretive groups to avoid detection. The turning point came when Manimarco transcended his mortal form and ascended to become a Daedric prince of necromancy. His transformation was both a victory and a defeat for the cult. While it elevated their leader to godhood, it also removed the mortal figure who had unified the followers under a single banner. Without Manimarco as a guiding force, the cult splintered, losing coherence and direction. The repeated purges, the loss of leadership, and internal strife shattered the Order's organization. While remnants and sympathizers still exist, they no longer pose the unified threat they once did. The legacy of the Worm Cult is complex. It serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the corrupting power of necromancy. Their stories woven through the history of Tamriel, with traces left in ruins, magical texts, and dark legends whispered by those who fear the undead. Even though the cult no longer commands armies or wields great power openly, the influence of Manimarco and his followers continues to ripple through Tamriel's magical underworld. Their dark arts and forbidden knowledge still tempt desperate or power-hungry mages, ensuring the Worm Cult's shadow never fully disappears. The rise and fall of the Order of the Black Worm is a tale of power, obsession, and the consequences of crossing the boundary between life and death. It highlights the ongoing struggle between order and chaos, mortality and the unnatural, and the lengths some will go to escape the fate of death itself. After that comes the cult of the Ancestor Moth. The cult of the Ancestor Moth traces its origins deep into the history of Tamriel as a group devoted to guarding the Elder Scrolls and interpreting their cryptic prophecies. This order is closely tied to the Moth priests, who are renowned for their unique ability to read the Elder Scrolls despite being blinded by their visions. The priests dedicate their lives to nurturing the Ancestor Moths, mystical insects believed to carry the spirits of ancestors and serve as a link between the mortal world and the divine. These moths symbolize the flow of time and memory, acting as spiritual guides during the priests' rituals and readings. The cult operates mostly from secluded monasteries and sacred glades where the environment is calm and protected, allowing the priests to focus on their work without interruption. Their duties extend beyond simply guarding the Elder Scrolls. They perform ceremonies to honor the ancestral spirits, maintain the delicate balance between fate and free will, and preserve the knowledge contained within the scrolls. The rituals often involve chanting, meditation, and offerings to the Ancestor Moths, who are treated with great reverence. The Moth priest's role is vital because the Elder Scrolls themselves are powerful artifacts that reveal future events, past secrets, and hidden truths. However, reading these scrolls comes at a great cost, as prolonged exposure causes blindness and intense visions, isolating the priests from normal life. Despite their isolation, the cult of the Ancestor Moth has played a significant role in Tamrielic politics and history, as their prophecies have influenced rulers, wars, and religious decisions. Over time, though, certain factions within the cult grew secretive, and some even fanatical, misinterpreting the Elder Scrolls' messages and pushing radical agendas. These splinter groups occasionally threatened the fragile political order by supporting uprisings or endorsing controversial leaders. The Empire, recognizing the danger in uncontrolled prophecy, began to suppress these factions, curbing their influence and preventing misuse of the Elder Scrolls. This led to a decline in the cult's public presence and the loss of imperial favor for many of its offshoots. Despite this, the core cult of the Ancestor Moth was never fully eradicated. It continued its sacred work in quiet obscurity, with much of its power and knowledge fading into ritual and legend. The priests who remain continue to protect the scrolls, but with increased caution, aware of the delicate balance between revelation and chaos. Their legacy is a reminder of the thin line between guidance and manipulation, and of the immense power held in the hands of those who can read the future. The cult of the Ancestor Moth story is woven into the very fabric of Tamriel, a constant yet subtle presence that shapes the destiny of the land in ways most never see. They embody a link to the past and a watchful eye on what is yet to come, maintaining a quiet guardianship that endures through the ages. And finally, the tribunal heresy. The tribunal heresy stands as one of the most defining religious conflicts in Dunmer history. Long before the tribunal temple solidified its control over Morrowind, many Dunmer tribes and priests rejected the worship of the tribunal gods Almalexia, Sotha Sil, and Vivek. These dissenters clung to the older Velothi faith, which honored the ancestral Daedra such as Boethia and Mephala, as well as the spirits of their forebears. This wasn't just a disagreement about gods, but a fundamental clash over Dunmer identity, culture, and politics. The tribunal was not only a religious authority but also the ruling power of the land, a fusion of divine worship and imperial governance. Those who opposed them were branded heretics and rebels. Many of these heretics lived on the margins of Dunmer society, particularly in the harsh and unforgiving Ashlands. The Ashlanders, tribal nomads steeped in the old ways, fiercely resisted the tribunal's influence, maintaining rituals and beliefs passed down from the Velothi Exodus. Their worship focused on ancestral spirits and Daedric princes who embodied power, change, and conflict. Figures like Mehrunes, Dagon, and Boethia, who were feared and shunned by the temple priests, but revered by the heretics. These dissident groups didn't just quietly practice their faith, they sheltered political opponents of the tribunal and those who sought to undermine its authority. This made them targets of repeated crackdowns. The tribunal launched campaigns to eliminate dissent, destroying shrines to Daedra and ancestral spirits, and punishing those who resisted. Their power was immense, backed by the blessing of the god kings themselves and the resources of the temple's forces, but opposition endured. This struggle intensified during the time of Dagoth-ur and the rise of the Sixth House cult, which further challenged the tribunal's claim to divine right and control. Many heretics joined forces with or sympathized with these new threats, viewing the tribunal's power as corrupt and oppressive. The politics and religion of Morrowind were deeply intertwined, and the heresy was as much a fight over governance as it was about faith. Despite the tribunal's efforts, the old Velothi traditions did not disappear. Instead, they went underground or were preserved by isolated tribes like the Ashlanders, who remained fiercely independent. When the Nerevarine emerged, a prophesied hero destined to challenge the tribunal's rule, the dissidents found new hope. The Nerevarines' return signaled the fulfillment of long-awaited prophecies that the tribunal's reign would end and the old ways might return. Indeed, the Nerevarines' defeat of Dagoth-ur and the resulting weakening and disappearance of the tribunal gods marked a turning point. With the tribunal's fall, the dissident and heretical beliefs gained quiet, vindication, and some measure of legitimacy. Old faiths, once suppressed, gained renewed respect, and the Ashlanders' traditions came back into the open. The tribunal heresy was never truly about wiping out the temple entirely, but about preserving alternative Dunmer identities and religious paths in the face of overwhelming central power. This conflict shows how religion in Tamriel is not static or uniform, but is shaped by politics, culture, and history. The tribunal heresy also reveals how belief can survive repression and transform into something new. It underscores the complexity of Dunmer spirituality, a blend of ancestral worship, Daedric patronage, and divine kingship, and how these different currents flow through their society. The story of the tribunal heresy connects the Dunmer not only to their past, but also to the ongoing struggles over identity and faith. It reminds us that behind every official religion are hidden histories and secret beliefs that continue to shape the present. The Ashlanders still honor their ancestors and Daedric patrons far from the cities, and their way of life remains a living link to that ancient heresy. The tribunal heresy stands as a testament to resilience, faith, and the enduring power of belief in Tamriel's ever-changing world. Many other lost or hidden traditions await discovery, showing that the story of Tamriel's people is far from finished. Then there are some cults which are a little hidden but still worth mentioning. Tamriel is home to many well-known religions and cults, but beneath the surface lie smaller, hidden sects that hold on to ancient beliefs or obscure worship that rarely come into the light. These fringe groups are not as organized or as powerful as the major cults, like the Mythic Dawn or the Tribunal Temple, yet they continue to exist quietly, sometimes with surprising fanaticism, in the secret corners of the continent. One of the most intriguing of these hidden faiths is the dragon cult in Skyrim. This group worships Alduin, the World Eater, or reveres the ancient dragon bloodlines connected to the dragons of legend. These cultists believe that the return of dragons will restore a lost age of power and glory. They see Alduin not as a destroyer, but as a necessary force of renewal and cosmic order. Though scattered and small, their belief runs deep, tied to the old prophecies and the elemental power dragons represent. They operate mostly in remote mountain caves or hidden shrines, keeping away from the public eye. Their acts are seldom violent but hold a mysterious intensity as they await the day their lords return. In the eastern regions of Tamriel, such as Craglorn, the Scaled Court rises as a darker force devoted to the Elder Daedra. Unlike the worshippers of the familiar Daedric princes, this cult follows elder and forgotten powers, drawn into renewed activity after the chaos of the Oblivion Crisis and the Plane Meld event. These Elder Daedra are older, stranger, and less understood than their better-known cousins. The Scaled Court is secretive and dangerous, seeking to reshape the world according to the will of these dark beings. Their rituals and magic are tied to ancient pacts, summoning powers from beyond mortal comprehension. Though not widespread, their influence grows slowly, fueled by unrest and the weakening of established orders. Moving to the deserts and jungles of Elsewhere, the Khajiit practice forms of worship that differ from the standard 9 divines of Tamriel. Some Khajiit reject the imperial gods entirely, instead venerating obscure lunar aspects and local spirits tied closely to the phases of the moons, Maser and Secunda. These moon worship sects see the moons not just as symbols but as living forces that shape Khajiit destiny and identity. They perform secret rituals under moonlight and hold fast to their own sacred lore. These sects rarely form large congregations, but remain vital parts of Khajiit culture, preserving ancient knowledge and spiritual practices in secret. These fringe cults do not seek widespread power or political control like the Tribunal or the Mythic Dawn. Instead, they thrive in the margins of society, often overlooked or dismissed as superstition by the mainstream. Their existence is a reminder that Tamriel's spiritual landscape is complex and layered, with many paths and beliefs beyond those in common knowledge. Though hidden, their presence shapes the culture and history of their regions in subtle ways, adding depth to the rich tapestry of the continent. In places where the old ways still hold sway, or where chaos unsettles the established order, these cults gather strength, waiting for moments to surface or influence events in ways that few expect. Their stories are less told but no less important in understanding the full spiritual reality of Tamriel. Across Tamriel's history, many cults have risen with a vision to reshape the world, driven by power, prophecy, or the promise of death and rebirth. Each cult had its own path and purpose, but almost all met harsh ends at the hands of empires, temples, or the slow passage of time. The Mythic Dawn, fueled by Mankar Kamaran's belief that Nirn was a prison, tried to break the world free through destruction. Their assassination of Emperor Uriel's septim and the opening of Oblivion Gates plunged the land into chaos, but their dream was crushed when the hero of Kuach stopped Mehrunes Dagon's invasion, and Martin Septim sacrificed himself to seal the gates forever. The Order of the Black Worm, under Mani Marco, sought to master undeath and souls, rising through dark magic and armies of the undead. Their infiltration into the Mages Guild and resurgence during the Plane Meld showed their stubborn grip on power, but repeated purges and the transformation of their leader into a Daedric prince shattered their mortal hold, pushing their cult into secrecy and fragmentation. The cult of the Ancestor Moth formed around the sacred duty of protecting the Elder Scrolls and interpreting their prophecies. Moth priests, blind but wise, carried on rituals that linked the past to the future. Though never fully destroyed, their more secretive or fanatical offshoots lost imperial favor and faded into obscurity when their readings threatened political order. The tribunal heresy marked a long conflict where Dunmer dissidents and Ashlander tribes rejected the dominant worship of the tribunal gods. These groups lived apart, holding to the old Velothi faith and ancestral Daedra like Boethia and Mehrunes Dagon. The tribunal and later Dagoth crushed many heretics, but the rise of the Nerevarine and the tribunal's fall gave quiet vindication to these older beliefs, proving that religious suppression could only hold for so long. Beyond these major cults, smaller sects and outlawed faiths persist in Tamriel's shadows, each waiting for the right moment to return. Some have evolved quietly, changing names or practices to survive, while others have gone silent, leaving behind ruins, relics, or whispers in forgotten caves. The stories of these cults show that belief itself is a flame that cannot be fully extinguished. Where one cult falls, another often rises, feeding on unrest, hope, or desperation. Somewhere deep in a ruin, a hidden temple, or a secret cave, a small group keeps the old ways alive, hungry for new followers and ready to ignite the next crisis. These faiths remind us that Tamriel's history is shaped not just by kings and wars, but by ideas and devotion that endure beneath the surface, waiting for their chance to burn bright again.